Well, welcome everybody to, the first part of, 6 great people in the Paul Mitchell world that we just kind of wanted to bring together and, have them just kind of share some insight of what the future of going back into the salon is going to look like today. And we thought we would, a great person to start with is Colin Caruso, because not only, is he a salon owner, but he's also the artistic director of professional hair color. And who better to talk about what color is going to look like when we go back, because we all know it's going to change a little bit. There's definitely going to be some shifts in our day-to-day business. And that's why, the first person we thought of is, well, let's get Colin to come on and talk about what that's going to look like. So, Colin, welcome for sure.
Hey man, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So before we dive into this a little bit, tell us a little bit about your journey of how you've gotten to where you are. You've been a salon owner, you're a platform artist, and now added onto your list of successful accomplishments is the artistic director of professional color.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I've been with John Paul Mitchell Systems indirectly for about 18 years. I started when I saw Robert and Stephanie and Scott and Linda. I love the diversity in that group. There's something for everybody. And I definitely learned from each of them as a young kid going to a hair show. And I think Robert really inspired me on the business side of hair, which I thought was really great. I really wanted to be able to support my family doing hair. I didn't look at it as a hobby. I had a family young, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to earn a living and accomplish the things I really wanted to through the art of hairdressing. So as a young kid, I partnered with a company that I always say loves me back. When I was 26, I opened my own salon, and I partnered with John Paul Mitchell Systems. And I'm really proud to say that I partnered with Paul Mitchell simply because the easiest decision in my life was because they were a professional-only hair care company. I couldn't see myself giving money to another company that was either owned by a conglomerate or basically had the color under the same name in the supermarket. That was like a big thing to me as a young kid. I just didn't understand that, couldn't wrap my head around it. If you're going to be professional, take my money and then give it to J-Lo or whoever else to say they color their hair at home. It just didn't make sense. So I made that decision. That was really why. And it was because Paul Mitchell was in the professional beauty industry. And now as we deal with this kind of COVID-19 situation we're all in, I'm even prouder than ever to say that, I partnered with a company that's professional only. There's a lot of companies out there right now that are hurting, but their stock is up, I love that about Paul Mitchell. And then when you look at even, as we deal kind of this situation, you look at a family-run company where both families decided to pay all of their employees 100% income through all this when they're not generating anything, is a testament and a statement to who this company really is. So I'm really proud of my decision, and I feel like now better than ever, it's kind of been validated, choosing a professional partner is huge moving forward for a lot of people. I think people are going to be considering that and reconsidering that, who their partners are through this in a lot of ways, not just product companies.
I love that. So when you think about when we go back behind the chair, what's the first thing that comes to mind as far as that's going to change in the color world? What are you anticipating?
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of people are bugging out, about potentially color drama situations where people color their own hair, so on and so forth. For me, we've always kind of put ourselves in a future mindset at CARU. Even before all this situation, we have tried to always operate with 100% future in mind, with, for evolution. I think that's one of the things that helped us as a company. We've been open 15 years. And a lot of my staff has been with me for that whole time. So it's kind of our job to evolve as we go through. I think the biggest challenge you're going to have as a colorist right now is the amount of people we're going to be allowed to see. If you work with an assistant, we don't know how many people are going to be able to be in a space at any given time. So that's really going to be challenging. Also, I know hairdressers, we're all pretty compassionate people. We don't necessarily want to raise our prices, but the cost of doing business is going to go up. So little things like Sanitation fees are going to have to be added to every service. I think that's important, where you're not trying to make money, but you're trying to cover your costs. But the really big challenge for a colorist is we often take one, work in between, work with assistants, a lot of us as traditional hardcore colorists, and that's going to be tough. So you're going to have to really kind of leverage technology, leverage your cameras on your phones, do FaceTime consults with guests before they come in to make sure they're booked the right way and they're actually receiving the correct service that they signed up for. And then back to basics. Formulation ain't going anywhere. It's the difference between capable and professional. So you have to make sure that you're able to definitely formulate your way out of these situations. So it's going to be a little tough go in the beginning, but I think for most of us, just emotionally, it's going to just feel great because we're going to be back in our happy place. We're going to be making people look and feel good. And that's what I'm choosing to focus on through all this, just easing it back in.
Colin, I love that you talked about sanitation fees. What's the reality of that? What does that look like for you? I know our salon teams are talking about a $10 fee. We're just kind of throwing darts in the air of what the possibility would be. What does that look like for you? And how will you let your guests know about that?
Well, sanitation is a big topic. And, at Paul Mitchell, like what we've been trying to do is ready, set, go. That's how we've been breaking things down, what to do to get ready. I know the schools are doing the same thing, what to do in set mode once to get set, and then what to do once the green light is switched on. I think the most important thing right now is not get too far ahead. And I think that's a problem that a lot of people have is they were in go mode when they should have been in getting ready mode. So what we're trying to do is figure out what the costs of the masks are, what the states are going to mandate. And then there's some 50-50 with clients, I think we forget that sometimes, like we're in this together. So I might not have to provide every client with a mask. They probably will have their own. They'll probably come in with their own gloves, so these are things that we could be a little flexible on. So Angus actually gave me a really great idea. He was talking about pre-set up boxes where the clients came in and they actually would each get their own box. And inside that box would have all their brushes wrapped, their own robes, gloves if they need them, masks if they need them. And I think it's just a kind of it could range anywhere from $4, $3, all the way up to $10, depending on what the guests need. And I think that's an opportunity, but I really do think it's going to be mandated, and then we're going to and the other challenge is, when do we buy gloves? That's another big thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're stockpiling gloves right now, that's awesome, but there's a whole bunch of people that still need them in the medical industry. So, a lot of us as hairstylists, we are emotionally intelligent. So we know not to stockpile anything till it's available. So I think, a lot of those questions will get answered moving forward, but it could range. And that's really what we're looking to do, right? Like we want to make sure that we fit, I always say this, like you should have, a lot of times you want to have more than one road. Like I've driven with people who use GPS and they will literally turn left down a one-way street, even though they know it's wrong because the GPS told them to go that way. A lot of people run their businesses the same way. So for me, it's like you want to have a guide, but you also want to be able to break away and take a different route depending on how things are evolving. So we're in the same boat as anybody, but I think ours will probably be around a $5 range.
Okay. So anywhere between 4 and 10. I love that. I love the preset box idea, Colin. That's brilliant that Angus came up with. Also, I love the fact that you said FaceTime consultations. And I think that's a really neat idea. We're actually kind of talking about that with our salon teams as well, too. How do you see that unfolding? Like give the practicality of that, the day in the life of Colin. I'm sure you've dreamed up what that might look like.
Yeah. I mean, for us, when you're looking at everything that's kind of going on, I mean, it's such a crazy place to kind of be able to look at what the future looks like. But one of the things I've always done, again, at CARU is we tried to plan on the future. So a lot of the things that we've had already in place are helping us. And I also had, just like anybody else, I have staff that have embraced new ideas. And I have staff that said, no way, I got it. I've been doing it this way for however many years and I'm good. The good news now is that everybody's in an open place. I think even the people that resisted, I mean, we've been doing FaceTime consults prior to this. It wasn't like this isn't a new thing. And again, I had staff who embraced it and staff who didn't. But now they all realize, like, wow, if we were doing this prior, it would be that much easier. We also have very few touch points in the salon. We close out at the station already. We don't have a lot of magazines just because I always thought they were gross when I went to the doctor's office. You know, so like we do a lot of digital, we wipe things down, we clean things up. So for us, it was always quite simple to be able to kind of just fall into place. But one of the advantages that we had was we were always trying to look at what the salon of the future looked like. And we were always planning for that. And, you know, in some ways they call it, you know, in other industries, it's being a futurist, which is kind of a weird word. And a lot of people would think that means you're trying to predict the future, which is not really the case. A futurist is someone who had a lot of experience in a certain industry. They use their past experience and they get kind of bored. Basically, they're like, I've done all this, what's next? And it's kind of a natural thing. And you put a label to it. That's kind of what a futurist is. It's people who are looking at past experience and then looking at things that are happening socially, economically, and technologically. When you look at those three things, how would they change the industry moving forward? And that's always been a place I've been excited to be in, especially, you know, the past 4 or 5 years. And in particular, once I became an art director, I felt like it was my job to be a futurist for the hair industry, particularly how it pertains to color, and try to think outside the box. So I think if you guys are doing that, it's really easy. And if you look back, I think it was like June 29th, 2007. That's when the iPhone was created. That wasn't too long ago. You know, it's about 13 years ago, and that revolutionized. And even if you look at how far the iPhones come from the first to the 11th, it's pretty rapid in how it changed everything. So, you know, that just excited me, those kind of things, like, you know, and then being able to look at it. Our salons, I think this is a big challenge for a lot of salons. They do business a certain way and they get comfortable. And a lot of that has to do with our teams. I do feel like they put up a fight sometimes, and sometimes as owners were like, forget it. Like, it's not even worth it. Let's just continue down. And that's when you become more about trying to maintain and then be creative. And then these new businesses open and they're using every single solitary resource they have, like we all did when we first opened, to be successful. So it's really trying to speak to different generations too. Your business should be able to pull in every type of customer and every type of employee. And one of the things we started to realize, even with different employees, because they were so drastically different and how they process information was so different, you kind of have this like guard up situation in salons where people are Gen X not getting along with millennials not getting along with Gen Z, so on and so forth. But really all it is, you know, or Gen X saying, this is how I grew up, so this is how they should be going through it. Like, I'll give you an example, like Saturdays. We used to be able to staff Saturdays so easy, but then as a salon, we got like when we hired younger people, they didn't want to work Saturdays. So my people that have been with me for a really long time would be like, they have to because I did. And that was their answer. And I'm like, well, that's not a very good answer, because when you look at what's important to that generation, they want freedom and flexibility. When you look at what's important to my generation, we want consistency and stability. These are two different wants, the definitions of success. Neither one is wrong. So maybe thinking about things different, like example, paying more commission on a Saturday than you would on another day, or increasing your prices a little bit for higher time slots, like a lot of other businesses do. Now, all of a sudden you're thinking different and you're providing a solution, and that's what it's all about. You know, a lot of people would say, hey, I'm going to work more because I'm going to make 5% more on a Saturday than I would, not on a Saturday. Now I'm filling my day, and clients would pay 5% more to get that weekend appointment. It's a win-win. So these are the type of thoughts that we have to have as business owners.
Yeah. I want to go back onto when you said some staff embraced certain procedures that you had and some didn't. And the interesting thing is Sean, in our course is called the Next Level Salon Ownership. And one of it is to fix your foundation. And it starts with, first and foremost, let's fix the foundation of how you actually pay your employees. So are they independent contractors? or are they actual employees? And you alluded to employees, which I loved, Colin, because now you can actually hold them accountable to a written system. And so what we talk about is you can't hold your people accountable to something that's not in writing. If it's not in writing, it's not a system. So talk about that, because I think first and foremost, this is your time to reset, to fix your foundation. Let's fix your business plan, because I think a lot of salon owners, what they've done is they didn't have a solid business plan. They overpaid their stylist. They got themselves into a pickle because it's dangling all these carrots. Now they're held hostage by everything in the company, and now their company's going out of business. I'm in Marco Island, Florida right now, Colin, and I didn't think any salons would close. I really didn't. I drove over here, picked up some food, a salon was shut down. And I'm like, was it the fact that maybe she was retiring and anyway and said, I'll just shut the doors? Or was it because she was overpaying and she knew she could never get ahead anyway and she didn't have that cash flow sitting in the bank? What was going on in his or her mind? So talk a little bit about that. Like, let's start fixing foundation. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I think the problem with the hair industry in general is that it's very hand to mouth, you know, and a lot of people didn't want to address that early on. But I think, you know, as this whole thing progresses, people kind of realize they're in a situation based on how they chose to be paid or claim, or there's a whole bunch of things. Like, the quick example I can give you is my staff was upset for years, and their employees, they're commissioned employees. A lot of them are hourly or salary employees. And a lot of them used to get really upset that I would put all their tips. Anytime anybody put a tip on a credit card, I put it through the paycheck system. And for the longest time, that upset a lot of my team because they felt like they could have just got that cash and pocketed it. But, you know, as a business owner, I'm paying tax on it. You know, my accountant's like, don't do it. But, you know, you want to do the right thing by people, but sometimes they don't have the business understanding of what is the right thing. Come unemployment time, they're stoked because their tips are now added to their unemployment. Come buying a house time, come buying a car time, this is income. There's a lot of people that, you know, didn't necessarily claim the right way. And we don't know, we're creative people. But what I tell people is, number one, you need to have a strong relationship with your CPA or your accountant. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to have the conversation. You have to understand that this isn't time to spend last week's money on this week's rent. I think one of the challenges really kind of existed was, you know, you could never stop the hair industry, so nobody had to worry about it. We could always make last week's money this week. But now all of a sudden they say you can't touch people, and now all of a sudden these very hustlers, I mean, there's not a hairdresser in the world don't hustle, that don't work hard, that's afraid of work. That's not the case. So we'll pay our bills, and we've always done it. We're creative people. We're creative financially as well. But sometimes you don't need to be as creative financially. You need to get to the foundation, like you're saying. You need to understand, you know, what a business looks like. And most salon owners aren't business people. They're just unemployable. They didn't work well with others. You know, they just said, I can't do this anymore, and I'm going to open up my own space. And I remember when I first opened, I didn't even pay my taxes for the first year because I thought someone was doing that. Right. So I opened, I had a great year. We did like 800 something thousand our first year open on the third floor of an empty building. And then I got hit with like a $90,000 tax bill that I didn't have because I was only 25 years old, 26 years old. I'm like, what is this? And they're like, this is your taxes. I went to my accountant, like, you didn't pay this? He's like, no, you have to pay it. I'm like, wow, dude, this is terrible. So I spent the next 3 years in debt trying to pay that. Right. That's a pretty common situation. So I think as people start to look and move forward, they have to decide what type of business they want to be, what type of business works best for them. We very well may find ourselves in these types of situations again. So, you know, what do you need to be happy and free in your life? Like, there's hairdressers right now that are scared and panicked and rightfully so. And then there's other hairdressers that are like, this is the best month off ever. Like, yeah, I dipped into my emergency funds, but you know, I'm reconnecting with my kids, and that's why we're all not in the same boat. Always say that. Everybody says we're in the same boat. We're in the same sea. Just we're on different boats.
Oh, that's good. Same seat, but different boats. Wow. Okay. And I love that you said, and also to really, really get into the mind of your accountant. Like I had to train my accountant to help me to figure out, okay, so if my goal is a 15% net profit, I need you to help me figure out what my expenses need to be. And then we go as far as figuring out how much each chair per hour needs to be making of a solid business plan. Now we're in a whole different business plan. We got to rewrite our business plan, but also to have a labor law attorney. So not just a family attorney, because I know my husband's a lawyer. So it doesn't mean that just because they have lawyer that they know everything about law. But we've actually hired labor law attorneys to really understand labor laws, because most business owners don't pay attention to the labor laws, and now they misclassify an employee. You misclassify someone that you treat as an employee that's an independent contractor, now you're in trouble too. So first and foremost, fix your foundation, fix your house. Let's fix your business plan. Let's fix your house. And, you know, we can help you do that. And it's just about education. It's about, you know, and now's the time, because now you can say, hey guys, we got into this pickle because we didn't have these things in place. So let's fix our house and then let's move forward. Talk about your team saying, you know, some of your team embraced it and some didn't. I mean, as simple as the fact we had one of our systems that we had, which by the way, I don't think it was ever written down. So this is where I blew it. I'm being real vulnerable, is wrapping the brushes per client. And I always thought, oh, what a great policy. And all of a sudden it just kind of went away. And it's like, what happened to that system? You know, it's kind of like people's dress code. Sometimes it's like, oh, how come they're dressed like that? Like what happened? You know, talk about that, of really developing solid written systems, and talk about how are you going to get your team fully on board. I think the why is pretty big now, so the how is going to be easy, but talk about the practicality. Talk to everyone on right now that's thinking, yeah, I need to rewrite my systems right now.
Yeah, it's a perfect time. I mean, most of us furloughed or laid off our people, so we're going to be rehiring them. So you're rehiring them. Just the fact that you're rehiring or your grand reopening, if you look at it from those two perspectives, it's really kind of easy to say this is what I want my business to do. And I'm not the best at writing things down either. I had to figure out what type of employees thrive in my business too. I'm probably different than a lot of salons where I have too many people that want to come work at CARU, just because of my connection to Paul Mitchell, really. And most of them just want to work for Paul Mitchell. They really don't want to work at my salon necessarily. And I understand that. And I will convince people not to come work for me a lot of times, because the type of people that thrive in my business are strong-minded, independent entrepreneurs that want to do, I don't have to, like my team, I don't have to convince them to work at all. They're going to work, they're going to come in, they're going to make room adjustments, because I hired entrepreneurs. But I also lost a lot of really talented, great employees because I didn't have the systems in place to help them succeed. And they got frustrated, and, you know, and a lot of them are now really huge influencers and, you know, doing their own thing, which I'm really happy for too. So I think sometimes, like when you look at it, it's what type of owner are you? I think you have to be realistic on that. What type of systems can you put in place, and what type of employees do you want to hire? We can hire wrong too. And even if you have all these systems in place, you can still hire wrong. And, you know, you got to look at who fits well in your business. But writing things down is huge, making sure you have systems, and it's really kind of easy. I mean, it's identify the problem, identify the solution, identify the problem with the solution, and then create the system. And that's what we try to do at CARU. And I think when you identify the problem with the solution, you're looking at it from different perspectives. So we bucket everything. So it'll be hairdresser, what's the problem with my stylist? What are they going to say? Like we did FaceTime consults. They didn't want to share their phone number. They didn't want to, you know, the lighting would be bad or whatever it was. We had identified all the problems they would have, and then we created solutions for those. And then we looked at the guest. What problems would the guest have? And then we identified those. And that's how you write your system. When you know, it's not as easy as like, here's my idea, here's my system. Otherwise, people will come in and punch holes straight through it, and they're probably going to be right. You know, so you really have to sit around and say, if I wasn't the owner, what problems would I have with this? And that's, again, we're all unemployable. That's the truth. So don't pretend like everybody's going to sit and want to work for you you know, we're all independent. That's the word. It's not unemployable. It's independent. We're all free spirits.
I like unemployable.
So,
I don't think even Sean would hire me. So I was trying
I
to
hear
think,
you.
what am I going to do if everything goes awry? I'm like, will Sean hire me? I mean, we'll figure out something, right?
I hear you.
I love what you're saying, Colin, because the fact, okay, so you have a hiring system and we have a whole month we spend on hiring, fixing your hiring, because most people don't even have a written hiring system. And the fact that you identified strong-minded entrepreneurs, but you also said something that made me think about when people quit you. People don't quit companies, they quit people. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we have a whole nother month just on fixing your leadership, because the higher your lid, the higher minded people that you're going to have coming to work with you. And so how have you personally worked on your own leadership lid, so to speak, Colin? And how do you grow yourself on a consistent basis? What do you do specifically?
For me, I'm super open to, like, I don't mind when people leave. It hurts. That's the first thing. It hurts because we all consider people our friends or whatever. But
right.
I think I honestly am friends with every single person that ever left my company, because I think that's what helps me grow, is like, I'm happy to see other people take their next step. You know, as much as you want to keep everybody with you, totally cool. I remember we were at Hairbrained last year at the Hairbrained Awards, and there's about 6 or 7 people that used to work with me that are so successful right now on their own. And we were all just hanging out and, you know, have drinks and just like, I was meeting their significant others, and it was awesome, you know? And I think that's the number one thing. Like, people, you know, even sometimes, like, this is something I firmly believe, your biggest mentors will be the last one, the one you get the angriest at sometimes as you hit your last phase, because you're kind of like, you're struggling with, like,
yeah, that's good.
I want my own thing. So sometimes, like, if you're a big mentor to somebody, they might come at you hard, but it's just so they can validate themselves to the next step. And if you're cool through that process and you allow them to kind of do their thing, they come right back into it, and they end up, you know, loving you forever at that point, because you didn't have an issue with it. You embraced it. You allowed it to kind of go through their process, and everything kind of equals out in the long run. So, wow. You know, I've had a lot of people leave me with pretty much everybody, with the exception of one person, has done it with class, and, you know, and has feel like they've given me the same respect I give them when they worked with me. And that's all been great. And even the one person that I feel like did, and I'm sure that person feels like they did, no hard feelings, nothing but love, because the only thing I can control is my own business and my own self and my own decisions. And even when that person had left, there's things I did wrong that didn't accommodate that person, you know, and everyone that's ever left me. So again, my father, he's always involved with, you know, of course, it's my dad. I love him. We chat all the time, and he'll always say, like, you're perfect for this job because you don't take anything personal. And then when anything tragic does happen, I look at the things I didn't do well through that tragedy. I don't look at the things that other people did. I mean, the other example I can give you right now is like box dye or people selling color take-home kits. So many people are so angry at the decisions that other people are making. And to me, it's like, you don't know what boat they're in. That's the difference. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't know. And some people, what I've learned through that is some people are doing that because they feel like it's the only thing they can control. Right. Some people are making that decision because they, you know, this is a client who's 80, whatever years old, and this is the one thing they feel like they could give that. I don't judge. I make the decision that's best for my company. And I'm proud of that decision when I look back. And I think those people are too. And you don't control that. You just control what you're doing yourself.
I want to back up too, when you're talking about that staff member that's kind of here now on the level system of you and kind of maybe fighting you a little bit. Talk about the reality of that, because I think I hear a lot from my leaders, Colin, is they feel like their team members are disrespecting them, so to speak, and they're starting to get angry at them because of the disrespect. So talk through that process of how they can raise their leadership lid. We've been talking a lot with our salon leaders about building appropriate, solid relationships with our team. So making sure you have that personal connection, but also keeping it professional, but not so professional that you alienate them and where they're just walking away like I've had enough, they put their hands up. Talk a little bit more details, because I think someone that's on here may be really struggling with that right now.
Well, I mean, a really good leader doesn't try to control anybody, you know, like you listen and you hear people's thoughts, and you should I appreciate getting challenged. And then I will also say, hey, you know, I've taken all that into consideration and this is where we're going. And if I'm still challenged, then I will go back to that person and say, hey, maybe this isn't the place for you. You know, like that is an okay conversation. But I really do think if you are a good leader, you accommodate those people, because there's a difference between complaining and providing a perspective. You know, if you're providing me a perspective that maybe I haven't thought of, I need that. I think the worst place to be in the world as a leader is to be surrounded by people who are yesing you to death. You see it in some celebrities, like you're like, wow, who is telling you this is a good idea? You know, like you want the people to be able to push back a little bit. So I always respected it. There's a difference between respect and saying yes too. I mean, just because somebody disagrees with your idea, you know, as long as they do it in a way that is productive and thoughtful, and you treat them the same way, you know, I think you can come to a common ground. But I also think it's really important as leaders to admit when you're wrong. You know, I have my moments where I'm like, I totally screwed that up. Or, I mean, here's the deal. I learned this a long time ago. I forget what book I read, but it was all about opinions, right? Perceptions, truth of the believer. There's no such thing as right or wrong. And those are things that I've always kind of admired. And that's something that's a quote I live by. So if somebody's providing me with a different perspective, it's not my job to say whether or not it's right or wrong. It's my job to figure out where they're coming from. Again, that could be a problem with a solution. So when I identify what that is, hey, here's what I got from what you said, I can pitch it back and say, you know, I'm going to look into this. People just want to be heard a lot of times. And a lot of times there is truth to it. And the one thing I got was, it was interesting. They said if two people came into an argument with loaded guns, one person's going to end up dead. You know, because your first reaction is to shoot. And I forget where I read it. I wish I could give it credit. But the idea in this book is that good leaders are unarmed. Even when they're dealing with someone who has a loaded gun, if you don't have anything to shoot back, your initial reaction is to talk them into pulling the gun away and having a conversation. And I think that's something I learned at a really young age. And that's kind of where I've always been. And again, sometimes you'll realize, hey, this ain't for me. But, you know, you'll see them a year later, 3 months later, a week later, and it's all hugs and good times. And, you know, and those same people end up supporting you in the long run. So you're just kind of completely unarmed in the situation. I have nothing to fire back. I'm going to hear what you're saying. I'm going to validate your points. And then I'm going to come back to you with, you know, my interpretation of that when everything's calm and easy to deal with.
I love that, Colin. I think that's the quote of the day. Good leaders are unarmed. And how do you stay in that mode of being unarmed and not allowing your emotions to run high, you know, when someone rebuttals against you, so to speak, that you feel like they're rebuttaling against you? How do you what do you do in particular to make sure that you're responding and not reacting? And one of the things I was thinking about is I'm really, really working hard to train our leaders to pick up the phone and not text people and constantly going back and forth on a text and going back and forth on an email, because you don't really understand the intent behind an email. Because some people don't know how to write a good email. They don't know how to fluff it and be kind. So my motto is always, hey, if it's bad news, pick up the phone. If it's good news, go ahead and email and text. But talk to those leaders right now that are like, oh, guilty. I have been fighting with staff members via text or email. Talk to them and what your experience is with that as well.
Well, every word counts. That's number one. If you're writing an email, you have to write it from the person reading it, not from the person writing it. You already understand your perspective. So for me, again, I'm not in the business of right or wrong. I'm in the business of getting things done. I'm the same way with my clients. And I think one of the things hairdressers have is this huge emotional intelligence. And I know how we get it. I'm spending 3 hours with a stranger I may not even like out of the gate. But what we're able to do through years and years of experience is find common ground. And most human beings, unless they're psychotic or crazy, and I don't say that to be funny, like they're pretty much the same, and they want to be loved, they want to be cared for, they want to be heard. And I think we're no different. So here's something I always tell people, and it works for hairdressing too. Passion is only good if it's reciprocated. If two people are passionate about each other, you have love. But if one person's super passionate about you, you have a stalker. It's the same emotion, just not received on the back end. So I watch people stalk their clients. I used Ash. I'm like, you're a stalker. You need to chill. You're not trying to be right. You're trying to make somebody happy. I think once people really kind of understand that I'm not really trying to be right here, I'm trying to get things accomplished. That makes a big difference. I also want to be clear that I'm not always very good at it. I'm a passionate person as well, especially at John Paul Mitchell Systems. And I remember when I first got hired, Jason Yates, our COO, brought me out and he said, and it was a completely, I was just having a moment. We were in like these tiny little meetings. There's only a few of us. And I just disagreed with the way something. And Jason pulled me aside and he said, you're bigger than that now. I want to let you know you're a leader. You have a title and a position. And I'm not saying I don't agree with you, which was the best part. I'm not saying I don't agree. But what I am saying, that's somebody else's work. That's somebody else's time. That's somebody else's, love and energy. And you have to find a better way, because, that's my job now. And that stuck with me. So every once in a while, I'll have my moment. I'll have my passionate. I see it. And sometimes it's hard and I consider myself a visionary. And I know it sounds egotistical, but I am. And I can see 5, 6 years, 7 years down the road sometimes on things. And it's frustrating because you see it so clearly. Well, it's not everybody else's job to see it the way I see it. It's my job to communicate it so they can see it. And that's the only thing I can control. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to learn. And I don't do it great all the time, but I'm learning like, all right, they don't see it. Time out for now. Let me go back to the drawing board and try to make an analogy or make a connection. Who am I talking to? What would help them understand what I'm saying? And you make it specific to them, and that's your job. It's not everybody else's job to be your interpreter. And if you are a visionary, good luck with that. It ain't easy. Style Trip being one of them. We were working on Style Trip, the travel series. I was working on that project for 9 years. Yeah. I pitched it every year. No one got it. And even after they finally said yes, we're going to do it, still people didn't understand it. And that's not like a derogatory thing. It's just, I was so passionate about it. I saw it 8 years ago. And if I'd started Style, when we did it, it was called Style Tramps. When we first did it, it would never have resonated because the whole world wasn't ready for that type of learning yet either. YouTube's and the platforms and now sometimes, it's not no. That's what Luke Jacobello always says. It's not no, it's just not yet, and that's some other things that you kind of got to look at. It's not it's not now.
Yeah. I love that you said timeout. And so sometimes you have to just give yourself a timeout. And I love that you said you have to help them to understand what you're saying in their language, Mm-hmm. And so we spent a whole month just on fixing your communication. And it's interesting because communication is the one thing we fail at the most, but work at the least. And so us just really, really going through a lot of courses of how to better communicate with our staff, how to honor our team members, as people. And there's a book we're reading right now called Radical Candor, which has really opened the eyes of some of our leaders, which I think is amazing. And I think it goes back to that, Colin, of being able to have those hard conversations. So let's talk about this, because I believe this crisis is going to separate the players from the pretenders. And I believe that some of us have pretenders on our team right now that we have, lack of a better word, I don't even like using it, but being held hostage to, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so talk about that process and what that might look like, moving forward. How do you know when someone should be on your team and when someone should not be on your team?
I think the good news is a lot of those people are going to make their own choices now, which is nice.
I agree.
They're going to go their own route. It's, and you have to be okay with that too. I even talked to my manager about that. I don't think I'm going to lose any people. I hope not. I love everybody that works for me. and does the job that I do every day alongside of me. But, you know, I'm also, you know, you have to understand that, you know, there may be some people, this is a big reevaluation of their lives, and, you know, it's a reset button for everybody. And that's, you know, people might be choosing different careers, you know? So, but I think you have to be okay with, you know, it's tough. I mean, I think if I'm really being honest, I think the money and the people go hand in hand, right? Like a lot of us look at losing money and we'll put up with stuff that we would never put up with because we don't want to be able to not pay our bills. And that happens over time. Usually it's not in the beginning. When you're young and just opening, it's easy, you know, like, you don't like it, get out, you know, I'll get 5 or 6 other people like, you know, but when that salon doesn't have fresh paint on the walls, or when that salon, you know, has experienced staff who's been here for X amount of years and they have a huge clientele. And I've said this to a lot of salon owners, there's 2 different eras. There is pre-digital era and post-digital era, and the 2 aren't even close. If you've owned a salon before social media, you have not owned a salon, in my opinion, the way it is now. Once hairdressers own their own book, it's a completely different game. So a lot of times people are, and if you've been involved in both, it's very difficult for you because this is how it used to be, but then you became afraid because when I left my first salon, I didn't have my book. You know, I was gone. This was pre-Instagram, you know, pre-Facebook really. So I didn't have my book. I had to just reopen and focus on reopening, and hopefully those people would come back. And I remember I told my team, it's not about your past, it's about your future. So don't worry about your past. Don't worry about the book you had. Worry about the people that are coming in so they turn into new people. Now it's very easy for people to leave and say, I'm out of here and I'm taking my book with me. And salon owners don't have any power. You know, it's very scary. And you might have power with systems and everything else, but you really don't. If 5 or 6 or 7 leave at once and you're done, you know, what do you do? So that's why you have to save and keep up for a rainy day. And that's really the truth. I mean, anybody that tells you differently is, you know, hasn't happened to them yet. And it always happens. And people will leave. And, you know, I've seen people buy books for pennies on the dollar, you know, like, and that's another thing you can do. You can buy a hairdresser, pay him 70% commission for the first year, and then switch their contract in the back end where they're getting 30, and hairdressers don't even know. And I've seen it happen, you know, and you're buying a client for pennies on the dollar just to get busy. And even if that stylist leaves, you still have a lot of those guests. And I've seen it happen, you know, in my neighborhood. And I've seen it happen where hairdressers had to sign contracts and then they couldn't work in the town they were in. And, you know, there's a lot that goes on through there. So I don't know. I think ultimately it's just a matter, and this is how I've always run my business. And I have a little hippie in me, but I just wanted to open a creative art space. I figured out what I need to make to break even. And I figured out what I need to make to, you know, earn a living. I'm quite frugal in a lot of ways. I'm not cheap by any stretch. I definitely am creative. I bring things in my life. I have about 100 sneakers sitting around me in this room right now, which is insane, but I've always been crazy about those things. So I get what it's like to be a hairdresser, but I also prioritized and I define what success looks like to me. I don't drive fancy cars. I don't take like luxurious vacations. I kind of realized that my time is what has been valuable to me. I gave back all the things that I bought, you know, when I was younger and trying to impress people, making them think that my career choice was the best one. I had Cadillacs and Navigators and you name it, $700,000 house when I was 26. I've given a lot of those things back because I realized really what I wanted to be was a successful hair colorist. Success to me was spending time with my wife and kids, being able to travel on behalf of John Paul Mitchell Systems, traveling different places, meeting different hairdressers, filling my tank up that way. And I really looked at what it was. And I think if you don't overspend your money and you really figure out what the basic number is you need to be successful as a salon, then you can make choices that are more in alignment with your person than are alignment with who you want to be financially. And those are just things that I learned through this. You know, you can be $1 billion salon owner if you want. And that's nothing wrong with that. but you're going to have to put up a lot more than if you have a very small amount of bills and small amount of stuff. Like the second somebody kind of isn't in alignment with you, it's a lot easier to be like, hey, you know what? I'm good, you know, and that's it. So I really do believe that's part of it.
Yeah, I believe a crisis reveals right priorities. And I love that you said that, because now is the time to write your own definition of success. And it's interesting because I was saying this is going to separate the players from the pretenders. We've had some future professionals talking to hairdressers. I don't know if they're successful or hairdressers or not, saying, oh, the future of the industry looks really bleak. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I grew up in the 80s and I was in dental hygiene. And that was the year we didn't wear any gloves or masks. And then they said, oh, AIDS just happened, so now you have to wear gloves and masks. So I went from can you believe in dentistry we didn't wear gloves and masks? And so then we went to wearing gloves and masks, and I was like, man, this feels awkward. And so I was just telling all of our stylists, I'm like, you guys, it's not a big deal wearing gloves and masks, you know? No. And I was so used to it for 14 years. But talk about, I love that you said that you're a futurist, because I believe true leaders see more and more before their people. And so what's the future of the industry to you, Colin?
I think it's amazing. You know, I think, you know, it's here's the deal. You got to plant a lot of seeds right now. And what that means is we don't know what the environment's going to be. We don't know what's going to grow. So I've been planting a ton of seeds, ton of ideas, plant, give the water to all of them, and then see what ones sprout. And then the ones that don't, throw them out. You know, you don't continuously water seeds that aren't sprouting. So that's really kind of an easy thing. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the successful salon owners out there. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of salons that won't make it through this. I don't think any single person wishes that on anybody. But I also believe there's a lot of salon owners that want out, and this is like the perfect out for them. It's not their fault, you know, like nothing is. So there's going to be a lot of people that are like, dude, I'm done. Then there's going to be a lot of other people that are like, wow, we're packed to the gills. I'll take your salon as a pop-up space. Like some of the salons I've been hearing, or I'll take that salon as another location, or, you know, I think a lot of that is going to happen. I think it's a great time to be in the professional beauty industry. You still can't stop the professional beauty industry. It's been stopped once in 100 years, which is pretty amazing. You know, since the Spanish flu. So that's a pretty good record. You know, we're pretty much recession proof. I know, you know, during the recession, a lot of people had numbers, but I do believe that was more linked to their spending and their home mortgages and everything else than it was to their business.
Yes.
People still want haircuts. People are dying to get their hair cut and colored. People are doing it right now. So I really do believe there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I really do believe that people value us even more than they did before. You know, which is hard for me to say because I never thought we were undervalued. I really never did. I think we're right up there with doctors, lawyers. And I don't mean that in this regard. All the respect to the world, to the people who are putting their lives at risk. I'm not saying we're doing that, but in some ways we will be in the next couple of weeks. And I think people will be proud of that and want to get their hair cut and colored. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I know my staff has been tipped and paid, and people love them. People have been reaching out to them, Venmoing them money through all this because they're that important. Who else in the world are they doing that for? You know, and I just don't. Yeah. I mean, they're thinking of their hairdressers every single solitary day. And I think we're right up there again with lawyers, doctors, accountants, that relationship importance. I think the hairdressers are up there, if not above a lot of that, you know. And the reason why I said years ago, I had a client sit in my chair and I didn't touch her hair yet, and she started crying. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? So I came over. I'm like, hey, what's up? How you doing? She was new. And she introduced herself. And I said, hey, is there anything I could do for you? And she's like, I know this is really crazy. I didn't think this was going to be a big deal. I've just had the same hairdresser since I've been 15 years old. She was about 27, 28. And she's like, I just moved here from a different state. And I just never realized how much I valued her because I never had to worry about my hair. And she's like, I never thought about it. And I didn't think I would come to a different city and cry. And I know you're good. And you've been recommended. She was really nice to me. But I'm like, wow, that's pretty impactful, you know? And she's like, I'm not crying over her doctor. She's not crying over her lawyers, not crying over, she's crying over the relationship she had with her hairdresser. I think that is an amazing thing to think about.
Yeah. We are essential. Hairdressers are essential.
Big time. Yeah, we
Yes.
are. And I'm glad we're not working right now too. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that's a hot topic, but I think it's nice that we get to stay safe and keep people safe. Being home is a beautiful choice. You know, and I just hope that everybody's in a place where, you know, that's doable for them. Because I know if no money coming in, it's terrible situation.
I agree. And yeah, I was just laughing because everyone on TV has their hair cut and colored and they all look amazing, which is funny. So obviously they have a hairdresser taking care of them for sure. Yeah, I laugh every day.
People are upset about the cops too, that was another thing that was driving me crazy. Like people were upset that the police officers were getting haircuts and I'm like, wow, man, again, worry about your own decisions. But if someone's putting your life at risk, let them get a haircut. And that is probably a cop cutting their hair. All my buddies are cops and they all know how to fade a little bit, but there's safety equipment. There's things that are important for first responders and policemen and women to have, you know, to make sure that their hair is taken care of. So, you know, it keeps them safe as well. So I just think it's a time that we all band together versus judge. And that goes for anything that the salon around the corner is doing. And again, to sum this all up, it's like, you can only look back at the end of this and be proud of the decision you made. And that's why I tell my kids all the time, you know, I'm not going to give you the right answer. You have to give yourself the right answer. But if you're being proactive versus reactive, if you're thinking long-term versus acting out of fear or whatever, I think that's what's going to help people. And that's what's going to separate, you know, because how you handle yourself through all this with your guests, with your team, with your staff is going to be a big statement when you do reopen. I was panicked, just like me, the first 2 days this went down. I mean, me and Robert Cromings were on the phone, like, you know, two scared teenagers, you know, like what the hell? And then the one time I felt better was I paid my team a whole extra week. I gave them all their PTO and their sick leave. I gave them a whole nother week off, and my accountant advised against it. He's a good guy. He's like, you know, that's a lot of money. You're going to need it to keep afloat. We don't know how long this is going to last. I'm like, yeah, but it's their money. So if I'm going to furlough them or temporarily, you know, get rid of them, I still owe them their paid sick leave and their paid time off. That's how I felt. And I get that it was a rough decision or whatever. Financially, it probably wasn't the best for me, but I also knew it was going to take some time for unemployment to kick in. And I didn't want my team to not have their money. When I made that decision to do the right thing, even though it wasn't right in the money management side of it, it was about, you know, $18,000, $19,000. When I made that decision, I got to call everybody and say, hey, I just want to let you know there's an extra week. What? They were so excited. And then I felt like, you know what? I made the right decision. It cost me a lot of money, but I have control. And that's when I felt good. And guess what? There's a lot of salons that didn't do that. And I'm not judging, but there's a lot of people that are hairdressers that are very successful in my town that are calling now because they heard I did that. And that wasn't my intention. My intention was to take care of my people. But now all of a sudden other artists are like, hey, Caru did this and Caru's doing that. And that's different. And those were some of the very salons that my team was saying before, hey, how come we don't have new sinks? How come we don't have whatever like that salon? And now all of a sudden,
wow.
So how you
that says a lot about you.
Play. Yep.
Thank you, Colin. Colin, we can't thank you enough for being on today. I wish we could have you for hours. We could go 24 hours. What's the best way to get a hold of you and to be a part of some of your programs that you're doing?
Well, I'm at Colin Caruso on Instagram. I have a Facebook, to be honest with you guys. I don't really go onto it too much. So I'm mostly on Instagram. We have a lot of stuff we're working on with Paul Mitchell, which we're really proud of. Both Angus, Michaeline, and John Paul wanted to make sure that we're not just providing hair content. So I'm really excited about that. We're going to be creating this new system. You guys will see it coming out this week. It's completely interactive, where we'll post things for the mind, body, soul, creative outlets, business building, a bunch of different things. And what's really cool is users can actually upload their own video content, and that's going to live at paulmitchellpro.com. And then mainly it's all the stuff that we're doing on Paul Mitchell Pro, Color HQ. I mean, that's all stuff to help everybody get back up and running. And we also have that amazing stimulus package coming out with John Paul Mitchell Systems. And that's another reason why I love this company so much. While no money is coming in, and I can say that about Paul Mitchell, I know that we only sell to professionals. Nothing's coming in. We were the first company to step up and say, we're going to give over $4 million back in products. I'd heard it's almost equivalent to 10 at this point, to get salons back up and running and on their feet. And that's why I love this family so much.
Yeah. Well, we love you, Colin. I know you're very, very loved. We're getting all kinds of messages coming in telling everybody how amazing that you truly are. So thank you so much. One last piece of advice to encourage everyone that's on this call.
Think about who you want to be. And that starts today. Who you want to be after this starts now.
Amen. Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tina. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we will see you next Monday for Anthony Whitaker. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
I'll see you guys.